Steve Rattner did it again. A few weeks ago, Steve Rattner did a comparison to show that what Donald Trump has been saying about his economy was actually false. Well, he did it again today, but he did it a lot more intense, a lot better because of a speech Donald Trump gave where he claimed that, one, his economy was better. Two, he created more jobs. Three, that crime rates were better under him and somehow migrant crime is terrible. And four, that somehow the oil that we were oil independent before and that Joe Biden went ahead and screwed it up. He actually said that. And what Steve Rattner did is Steve Rattner did some analysis. He looked at the economy. He took out the effects of COVID and he left the effects of COVID in to show that Biden's economy, whether you include COVID or not, was much better than Donald Trump's economy. Take out COVID. The jobs, Biden created a whole lot more jobs with COVID or without COVID. When it comes to the amount, the GDP, how much the economy created, the strength of the economy, whether you include COVID or you take COVID out, Biden's economy was a lot stronger when you did that. When it comes to oil sufficiency, when it comes to that, Biden, again, under Biden, America first became, since the 50s, became energy independent as opposed to under Trump, where it never was when it comes to oil. So when it comes to the crime rate, same thing applies. So as it turns out, Donald Trump is always looking in a mirror. And when he accuses someone of something else, it is whatever he's accusing that person of, it is Trump who has that deficiency. So he was deficient in the economy. He was deficient in job creation. He was deficient in oil drilling. He was deficient in, as well, crime, controlling crime. And all of these numbers are available for all to see. So those people who you see constantly talk about, the reason I am voting for Trump, he's a bad guy. I know that Trump is a bad guy. I know that. But I'm voting for Trump because the economy was better under Trump. The money was better. No, we'll talk about that on the other side, why you're voting for Trump. But check this out.
During his speech in North Carolina yesterday, Donald Trump made several false claims about the economy and what he accomplished during his time in office. First up, here is what Donald Trump said yesterday about the economy during his administration.
We had the strongest economy in history. There's never been a country that had an economy like us. I gave Harris and Biden an economic miracle, and they quickly turned it into an economic nightmare. See, this is an oft-repeated claim by Donald Trump that he had the strongest economy of all time, and now he's adding he handed Joe Biden an economic miracle. What's the truth about that?
Not only did he not have the strongest economy of all time, he didn't even have the strongest economy of the last two presidents, himself and Joe Biden. And so let's take a look at some of the facts here. First, the best measure of an economy is its growth rate, a GDP growth rate. And so when you compare the two, and I have adjusted out COVID in fairness to both presidents, although you see it doesn't actually change the picture. Trump grew his economy at a rate of about 2.6% a year, which is actually not a bad rate. And that excludes COVID. Biden has grown so far his economy at 3.5% a year. If you take out the effects of COVID, the disparity is even greater. So I've done this as honestly as I can do it. No matter how you do it, it doesn't come out in Trump's favor, even against Biden, let alone against 5,000 years of other economies around the world. Secondly, you can look at jobs. That's a very important thing in an economy, obviously, to Americans. And again, I've adjusted out the effects of COVID. 182,000 jobs on average a month created by Trump. 271,000 jobs on average created by Biden. Again, if you take out COVID, the disparity is far greater. So that is one of his most preposterous claims.
Yeah, the numbers don't lie, and he has made that point. We were cooking along, and then COVID came, and that's not my fault. We can talk about that more, of how he handled COVID. But even adjusted for COVID, you're saying Joe Biden has had the better economy. All right, let's move on to energy. This is former President Trump talking yesterday about American oil production and energy independence.
We were energy independent 4 years ago. Think of it. Today, we're getting energy from Venezuela in the form of tar.
Steve, what do the numbers show?
Well, first of all, we were never energy independent under Donald Trump. In fact, we really haven't been energy independent going back until sometime before 1950. You can see that the amount of oil imports that we had during Trump did in fact decline. This is part of a long progression that goes back to the mid-2000s. It's nothing that he particularly did. It continued under Biden, and lo and behold, the first time we have been energy independent as it applies to oil was in 2023 under Biden's presidency, when we actually exported a bit more oil than we imported. Now, Trump is hung up on Venezuela. I'm not exactly sure why. He usually likes dictators. In this case, he seems to not like it as much. It is a fact, as Trump said, that Venezuelan oil is bad oil. It's very heavy. It's very polluting. But look what happened to Venezuelan oil imports over the last 7.5 years. Under Trump, we averaged 10.3 million barrels of Venezuelan oil a day coming into this country. Under Biden, we're down to 1.7 million barrels a day of Venezuelan oil. So the idea that somehow Biden is the one who brought in all this Venezuelan oil is absolutely directly contradicted by the numbers.
As is often the case, exactly the opposite is true of what Donald Trump says. In fact, we are not running on Venezuelan tar. Okay, let's talk about migrant crime. Donald Trump yesterday in North Carolina went on a tangent about what he claims is a surge in migrant crime. Here's what he said.
They all said I was wrong when I said that migrant crime will reach epidemic proportions. And now it's much worse than that. It's a lot worse than epidemic proportions. It's beyond control. We have a new category of crime. It's called migrant crime. And I think it's going to end up being the worst category of all.
All right, Steve, what does the data show?
Well, it was supposed to be an economic speech, but he can't help himself, and he has to get off into things like migrants and immigration and the border and crime and all that kind of stuff. But once again, the facts are not quite what he said. First, let's just talk about crime in general. He likes to think the country's in the middle of some crime wave. That is actually not true. Violent crime per 100,000 people has dropped 26% under Joe Biden, from an average of 398 per 100,000 people down to 294. What is even more amazing is that it, in fact, ended Trump's administration slightly higher than when it began, or certainly at best, most favorably. You can't see any improvement under Trump's administration. All the improvement has been under the Biden administration. Now, there's the fallacy of migrant crime. If you read the New York Post, you'd think, of course, all crime was committed by migrants. But in fact, we've talked about this, I think, before, but it's really quite dramatic. If you break crime down between native-born Americans, documented immigrants, and undocumented immigrants, you can see that native-born American crime rate is actually higher than it is for documented immigrants and way higher than it is for undocumented immigrants. That's true whether you look at violent crime, whether you look at property crime, when you look at drug violations. The fact is, immigrants actually commit fewer crimes than Americans. And for the undocumented immigrants, it's not totally surprising. They don't want to get sent back to wherever they came from, so they tend to behave themselves better than a lot of Americans and a lot of documented immigrants. So this is a complete fiction that Donald Trump has created.
So as you can see, everything that Trump said made him a better president, or why you should vote for him, for the economy, for jobs, for oil, for crime. Everything that he claimed the Biden-Harris administration failed at, it is actually what he failed at. And again, the data is there, but you know who else knows that data? Anybody with a 401k also knows that data. That person with a 401k knows that data because his or her 401k has zoomed up. So there's another reason they're voting for Donald Trump, and it has little to do with your economic sufficiency, with criminality or anything like that, because the biggest criminal actually is, in fact, Donald Trump. But you have to look on the inside to see why these people still, after it's been proven that Donald Trump was a failure on all these things they claim the reason for which they're voting for him, that they're still voting for him, then it means that the same proclivity, the racist, xenophobic, misogynist, sexist behavior of Trump is something that they condone, or even maybe a bit worse, something that they are a part of. We have to be honest here. You can't tell me you're voting for Donald Trump for economic reasons, even though you know he's a bad man, even though you know what he does to women, even though you know what he does to the working class. You can't be voting for this guy under those pretenses at all. You're not fooling yourself. You're not fooling anybody else. You're voting for Trump because of, and you fill that blank in, but it sure as hell isn't because of your personal economy. Let's be clear. A vote for Trump tells your own kids a little bit something about you. It tells your daughters that you don't mind supporting a man who abuses them, who holds them by their crutches, who does all these things to them. You don't mind that. You don't mind your son if he decided to go out there and rape a woman or sexually assault a woman or something of that nature, because you've found it in your heart that you could actually vote for the most powerful position in the world, a sexist, racist, misogynist felon. You felt it was okay to vote for that person. It's you who have to live with that. Anybody who votes for that as president of the United States.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel. And number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.